If you enjoy what we do on these podcasts, please go to mwpnews.com. There you can see articles about some of the movies we've seen, some things that we don't talk about on podcasts, and links to ways you can support the show. Thank you. Good evening, and welcome to Beware of Spoilers. I am Adam. On this, we're getting into winter now, so it's starting to get a little chilly out. First movie back in the new car era. So if it sounds a little louder than normal, number one, it's cold, and my car, you know how cars are in the cold, they're like, why? And beyond that, it's, we're in the cold era, and the car's a little bit louder than the old one. So, we're here to talk about Conclave, which, let me just say, I went into this movie knowing almost nothing. Like, I knew it was a movie about a papal conclave, which, for those who weren't raised Catholic, is the process by which the, the Catholic Church chooses a new pope once the previous pope dies. Basically, they have to assemble all the cardinals, which is like the area managers of the Catholic Church. They all assemble and they hold a vote. The vote, whichever cardinal gets a two-thirds majority, is elected to be the new pope. Until that point, they just keep voting over and over and over again until they have someone. So that's what this is about. This is about the process to elect a new pope. And it's a fictionalized account. So, movie opens, old pope dies. And I'm going to say it right now. Let's just get the spoiler-free part out of the way, because I feel like this is a movie where if you haven't seen it, go into it not knowing anything major. Because I'm not saying that knowing things about the movie will make it a worse experience for you. What I'm saying is, I think it's best experienced without knowing. In the same way, like when we talked about See How They Run, or what was the other big one we did? Or like even going back further, like the movie Witness to the Prosecution had that disclaimer at the end that said, "Don't tell anyone, how this ends," which is kind of like the first spoiler warning proactively that I can think of. Sorry if that was louder than I anticipated. I covered the mic with my hand. So, regardless, Edward Berger is a great director. He directed All Quiet on the Western Front. He did a great job here. I think Ralph Fiennes is a great performance. John Lithgow also has a good performance. And who was the other one? Stanley Tucci's great too. This is a very well-made movie, I'll say. They did a lot of really, the cinematography is great. There are a few questionable edits, I think, that don't exactly look the best. But beyond that, I think that it's kind of it's very well made. I think the strong suits come from the acting performances. That's not Elaine. Wow. Asshole in a BMW. But the thing I want to point out with this is what we're going to be talking about from this movie, and I don't think it's going to win Best Picture, but I think it's going to be in the conversation as we get into it. I think it may make my top 10, because I watched it, I'm like, this is so well paced, and the narrative is very well handled, so it keeps you engaged the entire way through. I'm not saying it's a perfect movie. Like I said, there are some edits that are a little weird, and I'm not really a huge fan of this style of scoring with the strings and the I don't know how to describe it, but the very short use of strings is not something that I'm a huge fan of. So this, that's kind of, my big, that guy blew that red light by a mile. That's kind of my thing with it. I think my pick, if it gets nominated, will still be Dune Part 2 for Best Original Score. Granted, I just don't like this, the way they do, the short use of strings. It's not something I'm particularly, overly, thrilled about. And I'm not a huge fan of them using it as much as they are. But let's get into the spoilery territory for those of you who want to hear. So, Pope dies, and now we gotta, have the conclave for the new Pope. You have Ralph Fiennes, who is kind of the main guy. He's the dean of the College of the Cardinals, or whatever the hell the order is called. And he's the one who's going to be, running the conclave and making sure that everything that needs to happen to select the new Pope happens properly. On top of that, you also have, these, all the cardinals start coming in. There's a cardinal who believes, it becomes very much a fight between where should the church go. The church is kind of at an inflection point in this movie. I would say not unlike reality to an extent. Like, the church is kind of in a weird position where it's like, do we try to, lean in with the past, or do we, try to move forward and do something new? So it becomes this, liberal versus conservative approach to how do we handle it. And I'll say this, it feels weird to kind of use that, that terminology. Because, I don't know. Regardless, it's like, that's what it's about. So you have, Stanley Tucci kind of represents the old guard, or the new way of thinking. He wants to have women have an expanded role in the clergy. He wants to be more open and accepting of things like divorce and things like gay marriage and stuff like that. So he's kind of like the more open and accepting version of the church. Meanwhile, you have the other guy who, the actor looks familiar. I'm not 100% certain where I've seen him before. I keep wanting to say My Penguin Friend, but I haven't seen that movie. I've only seen the trailer 4 times. But that guy is kind of the opposite. He's diametrically opposed. And there are a few other people who are all kind of there. John Lithgow is one of them. He's one of the conservatives. And then you also have, I keep wanting to say Etta Bari, but I think that's the girl from The Bear. But he wants to be, he also wants to, and he's far right. And the thing they point to him with is, he says that, gays should belong in jail for life and then in hell for eternity. That's kind of what the fight is over. Meanwhile, in all of this, a mysterious extra cardinal has shown up. And it turns out that there's a process, I'll take the movie's word for it, there's a process by which the Pope can appoint a cardinal in secret, as to not put that cardinal in any danger, but he shows up to participate in the conclave, and here he is. Then you have, Stanley Tucci, who is, the face of the liberals, and then, Lawrence, who's the main guy. He is, he's just trying to run things. He doesn't really want to be Pope, according to him. And then things start unraveling, as things are prone to do in movies. Otherwise, you don't have a movie. If it's just the Pope's dead, here's the conclave, oh, look, we have the new Pope, let's move on. It's not a great movie. So, things unravel, secrets are revealed about people, and then we get to, kind of a moment that I'm going to liken to the end of 12 Angry Men, in a way, and it's a very well shot scene. I'm a big fan of the way that this whole scene is done, where it's it's after the 5th to the 6th vote, and they're starting to hand in their ballots, and a car bomb goes off outside, and everyone's collected up. No one in the Cardinals is injured, so they have this little conversation in this large theater. And, the main conservative guy stands up and he's like, this is your fault, to Stanley Tucci and your ilk, your relativism, your idea that everyone should be treated equally. It leads to this. The Muslims come here, and he goes on this whole rant, and then, he's like, we're at war, and then you get the new guy, and the new guy, the reason why he was at risk is because he was in Kabul, in Afghanistan. So, identifying him as a Catholic, missionary in Kabul is very dangerous under Taliban rule. So, that idea is like, he's like, what? I've been in the Congo. I've seen, like, what do you know about war? I've seen war. I've been to the Congo. I've been to Baghdad. I've been in Afghanistan. I've been all over the world. Oh my God, a Cybertruck. And I've been all over the world, and I've seen all these things. And what do we want to? What do you mean by war? Because it's not just we're fighting men, we're fighting women, and it's women and children who are the victims in all of this. So the final vote happens, and and this guy who came out of nowhere is elected to be Pope. He picks the name Pope Innocent, and he assumes the throne. Now the whole time, like, they're supposed to be sequestered, and I don't think they, like, this is kind of my big problem with the movie, is that it's like, they're sequestered, asterisk, but for whatever reason, he has this guy who's a Monsignor who can go back and forth inside the sequester, and it's like, I feel like you don't understand what sequester means if this guy exists and he can get to the outside world and get you information, and then you pick and choose which of this information you want to keep. It's a weird thing. Like, I would have preferred that be handled a little bit differently, but regardless, it is what it is. So he's like, look, I looked into it, because the whole time he's looking into this guy. I mean, like, where did he come from? What's going on? It's like, oh, he was gonna go for medical something or other in Geneva, but then didn't. And then it's like he finds out, oh no, I wish you had told me earlier, because he was just elected Pope, but he went to a clinic. And your thought goes, he had a drug problem. So then what happens is, the Monsignor tells Ray Fiennes off screen. We immediately go to the room where he's getting dressed, and then, he goes in, and he talks to the guy, and he goes, what were you going to the clinic for? And when I say I have not been thrown by something in a movie, I would say probably ever, by a reveal in the third act. The reveal of what the procedure he was going to get was. Like, when I say nothing has thrown me like that, I would say nothing has thrown me like that in a long time if Matt Gaetz was not nominated to be Attorney General this week. But what he says is hysterectomy, and I was like, holy fuck, did not see that coming. And he tells the story. He's like, look, I was born, as I am now, and you have this modest life when you're in the seminary, and then, you don't think anything's different about you, and then you go to the doctor, and the doctor's like, oh shit, you have, ovaries and a uterus, and he was going to have them removed, and then he went to the Pope, and the Pope was like, I'll help you do whatever you want, but you were called to service. I'm not going to say, oh, now you got to leave, and let you tender your resignation. And I feel like the Pope doesn't take phone calls or audiences with any missionary who's trying to resign their position. I feel like there's someone like between the Pope and that guy. But regardless, he's like, the Pope said, I will, if you want, you can, I'm not gonna take your resignation. If you want, we can get this fixed. So he's gonna, he's preparing to go, and he has the thought, it's like, why would I change the way God made me? So he remains elected Pope, and that's the thing. But when I say that ending threw me in a way that I was like, Jesus Christ, I did not see that coming. That's not an exaggeration. I was like, and the thing is too, like, I'm in this theater, and it's gotta be like week 3 this movie's been out now, because I think it came out the week before the election, and then I think it came out opposite Venom 3, and and there are people. This is a reasonably crowded theater for week 3 of a movie, and it wasn't one of the small theaters either. It was one of the mid-size, like the SUV of theaters, and it's like that was the general. I was like, whew, like the minute that reveal happens, and it's handled so perfectly. But that's the thing, is that it's like there are so many little reveals that go the entire way. The way that one of the priests was having an affair, one of the cardinals was having an affair, had an affair 30 years ago, and had an illegitimate son, and the woman showed up in Rome at the request of one of the other cardinals trying to sink him, because one of the other cardinals had these great aspirations of being pope. The whole thing is so interesting and well executed and well paced, where it's like the votes are kind of like these moments where it's like kind of to take a appraisal of where we are in the story, and it's all handled so well. I think this should get nominated for Best Adapted Screenplay. I'd have to look more specifically at the other movies that are in that contention. I think Blitz would fall into that. I think Nickel Boys is probably the odds-on favorite at this point. But this could be a contender in that category. And I think too, it's like this. It's very well shot. It's very well directed. It's just, I think there are some editing quirks that are not 100% there. But I think it will get nominated for Best Picture. This is a 5 out of 5. We still have to redo the ranking scale or the rating scale, and I would not be surprised if this movie was in my top 5 when we do or let's say top 10, because I think my number 1 is still my number 1, short of, because I was thinking about this before the movie started, where it's like it's a weird situation where every year there's like 1 or 2 movies that come out early and are kind of like cemented in the top 5. Like Everything Everywhere All at Once, which has ended up being my favorite movie of the year, or like last year, I'm trying to think what was last year. Like Oppenheimer was second half of the year, Killers of the Flower Moon was second half of the year. I gotta look at my list again from last year. I don't remember what I had, but there are those movies that come out early, and this year I think we have a solid 2 movies that came out, or maybe even 3 movies that came out that are kind of like basically guaranteed spots. Between Dune Part 2, Challengers, and Civil War, with Dune Part 2 and Challengers definitely in the top, they're definitely in the top 5, and then Civil War definitely top 10, I feel. This movie's in there. I gotta look at where I have my current rankings and kind of try and see if I can slot it in. But this is a very well done, well-made movie, and I think it's a good throw. And the thing is too that struck me, and this is the other thing that I really wanted to address. The movie's PG, which is one of those things that, like, I don't think AMC quite knows how to block the ads with this, because it's like it's a PG movie, so like they can't go too deep on the ads, because they can't really show too many rated R ads, but this movie is definitely skewed more towards an older audience. That said, there's nothing you can really, so you show an ad for Dogman right before it, and Paddington, and it's like, oh, okay, cool, but like that's not the same audience who's going to see this movie. But either way, the point I'm trying to make is, like, all we hear from people, especially when we talk about like comic book movies and video game adaptations and all this stuff, is that it's like the movie has to be rated R to be mature and taken seriously. And it's like, look, this is for adults like this, take me seriously. And I think this movie kind of proves you don't need to do that, because this is it's not an adult, but it is a mature story, and it is very well done. And I think there's a solid chance this movie gets nominated for Best Picture. When was the last time a serious movie that's like not for kids, that's PG, got nominated for Best Picture? Like, I would be interested to know that, especially in the era of the PG-13 rating. But yeah, I would recommend seeing this movie. This is a 5. If you can see it in a theater, go see it in a theater. Because again, I think movies like this that are at their core basically political thrillers do deserve your full attention in a way that watching the movie on streaming at home will not allow you. Because like, I can tell you right now, I love this movie, and I think it was great. The same thing happened last year with Oppenheimer. When my dad watched Oppenheimer at home, he was like, yeah, it was good. But when you're at home, you're getting up, you're leaving, you're on your phone, you're having conversations with other people. It's it's not just you, to an extent, you in the movie. And that's kind of what this is, and that's the best way to, I think, experience this is go and see it in the theater, so that way you are in a situation where you have to, grapple with what you're watching, for lack of a better word. You have to sit there and kind of take in what this is and live with it as it's going. That said, I would recommend seeing this as soon as possible. But we'll wrap up there for today. Tomorrow morning we'll be doing Emilia Perez, the new movie on Netflix, which is another movie that I've heard very good things about. And these are both movies that I heard very good things about at Hamptons from people I spoke to when I was there. I just didn't get to see either of them. Emilia Perez is supposed to be really good, though, and it's getting very positive buzz. I'm very interested to see this. And I've heard Zoe Saldana has a performance that could net her a Best Actress nomination. But we'll see. We will be watching that. Actually, I'll be watching that in a little bit because it's on Netflix. But until our next episode, have a great rest of your week.